Welcome back to our MAS tutorial series. I'm Jake, and today we're exploring the variation module. This is where you'll log and track all variations or change orders against your contracts, making it easy to manage changes to scope, cost, and time throughout your project. To get started, in the cost module, you just click on the variation tab to navigate to the variation module. From here, this is where all the contract variations will be managed in one place. When you're looking to add in a new variation, you just hit the Add Variation button in the top left-hand corner, which will open the variation form. The very first thing that you want to do is just enter in a name for the variation. It's always good to be descriptive so it's obvious what the variation is. If you've got a standard numbering or naming convention, that's really, really useful as well. And then you just select which contract you're looking to vary. The contract needs to be approved. If it's not approved, it will not show up in this list. But it's like that. Then you've got a variation category from the dropdown. We have got a lot of standard categories that we have added to allow you to track the types of variations occurring in your projects. But if you would like additional categories or any changes to existing variation categories, reach out to MAS support and we'll be able to go through and make that change for you. Now, under status, you've got multiple different options that determine how the variation is treated in the system. The first is the draft. It stays in the variation module. It has no impact on your finances. Both forecast and pending, they will appear in the uncommitted column in the overall page. In principle, it will appear in the approve variation column, along with approved. In principle and approved are the only two statuses where you can make payments against a variation. And then you have rejected and withdrawn. Both of these will not appear in the overall. They don't impact your project finances, and they're only visible in the variation module or in a tile for the variation. So the status directly affects how the variation appears in financial reporting. So only the in principle and approved variations will appear in the approved variation column in the overall page and become available for payments. Now, under here, we've got a couple of other things. We've got this description here where you can enter in a description for the variation. And then under additional fields, this is where you can enter different numbers based on your project's governance requirements. So whether it's your variation number, variation price request number, a reference number, a variation order number, variation approval number, or a clause. None of these are required for a variation to be added into the system, but it's always important for you to use these fields based on your organization's processes and governance. So that's what they're there for. I can hit hide to make them. And then once you've selected the contract, you'll have the contract breakdown showing all the line items in the contract. So I've got this one. If I go for this one, you can see full line item breakdown. And then there's two ways you can add in a variation. So the first, you can vary existing line items. For example, let's say for concept design up here, we have got a $1,000 variation because of a scope increase. I can go through and I can vary that line item directly. That is really useful when it is a specific variation for a specific line item in the contract, or if it's something like a provisional sum and you're removing provisional sums. Alternatively, you can add entirely new line items using the teal contract variation line just down here, and then adding the funds just here. That's another way you can do it. Yeah. Sometimes what you want to do is you want to track what was initially requested versus what was eventually approved. And that's what this preliminary amount column is for. This just tracks, well, what was the actual initial request that the consultant or the contractor came to us with, and what did we eventually negotiate them down to? So that tracks the negotiation outcomes. For example, let's say for this, instead of $1,000, they initially requested $2,000. That is what you can go through and put in for that. So it will show how you actually went through and negotiated it and the benefits you did. Now, the preliminary amount does not affect finances at all. It only appears in the variation module here, and on variation table tiles for reporting purposes. Similarly, you can also track your preliminary EOT and variation EOT, but that does require you filling in the contract completion date before that is enabled. So if you do not have a contract completion date for your project, you cannot actually go through it and fill in an EOT variation. But that's what that's there for. Now, down the bottom, we have got notes. So these are internal notes. They will not be appearing in any exports that you've got from Mast. And then you can also upload any files or attachments. And then once you're done, you can just hit Add. Obviously a good idea to review the information. I'll just go through and chuck in a name for this one. Cool. I'll just go through and I'll hit Add. There we go. Once that's done, it will then appear just here in the variation module. So once a variation has been created, you can click on the 3 dots and manage it. So you can either edit the variation as you can, just to change its status. So as it moves through the process, once it's in principle approved, you can go through and do that. And then if, let's say, it gets rejected, you can go through it, and that will fill in things like access things like what date was it submitted, what date was it rejected or approved. You can go through and update as you get all that formal guidance. So generally we recommend changing a status rather than deleting a variation. Let's say that, for example, this variation was rejected. We would always recommend just change it to rejected rather than delete it entirely, because this will maintain a complete record of all of the proposed variations, including those that weren't approved. We would generally only recommend deleting variations if they were created in error or if there's a mistake. And to do that, you click on the 3 dots next to variation, you can delete the variation there. Now, obviously, this does need to make sure that you don't have any forecast cash flow or any forecast or payments against it. So just make sure that's all done and just hit delete. Now, as you can see, I've got a mix of variations here. I've got one that's in forecast and others that are in principle and approved, and these are all against the builder. So if I go back to the overall page and I go to main works budget just here, you can see that I've got this just there, and we've got the scope change. This is the forecasted one, and it's appearing in the uncommitted column. All these other variations, these are approved or in principle, and so they're going to appear just here. But let's say I go ahead and this one, I edit it, because you can also edit it from the overall page. 3 dots, rejected. If I go through and I update that, it then disappears from here. It no longer has any impact on the forecast final cost. And then in variations, if you click on 3 dots, you can also get access to a variation approval PDF, if that is something that you are looking for. So that is how you can effectively manage variations in Mast. So by tracking all of your contract changes in a really structured way, you can maintain really clear documentation and accurate financial forecasting throughout the life of the project. In our next video, we're going to be looking at forecasts and how to create and manage forecasted costs within Mast. Thank you so much for watching.